Well, it's 60 years since the United Nations Refugee Convention was signed. And in Syria and elsewhere in the world, millions of refugees are struggling for basic essentials. After 3 years of war, more than 2.5 million Syrians have fled to neighboring countries for safety. Now, Lebanon is hosting almost 1 million of them in makeshift camps, whereas Turkey has around 668,000. More than 222,000 are in neighboring Iraq. And there are almost 600,000 refugees now sheltering in Jordan. But then there are those who are refugees inside their own country, almost 6.5 million Syrians who are internally displaced. Well, Richard Murphy is a former U.S. ambassador to Syria and to Saudi Arabia. He joins us live now from New York. Sir, thank you so much for joining us here on Al Jazeera. Perhaps it's a dark irony that just as the UN Convention on Refugees celebrates its 60 years, the world is being overwhelmed by this refugee crisis in Syria. But just remind us, what rights do these refugees have now with this convention that they wouldn't have had the convention never come into play?
Well, the convention was designed to assure their legal and their social rights. But as with so many conventions and international understandings, if there isn't the political will on the part of key actors to reach a solution, then the international resolutions go for nothing.
I guess here the role of the UN is crucial, and we just heard before about the situation in the Yarmouk camp, about food can't even get in there. What more could the UN do you think, if anything at all?
Well, the UN has a limit which people tend to forget. They must follow the directions of the host country. They have to respect the sovereignty of the country. And if that country, that government will not allow, for instance, distribution teams with medicine, with food to go into a certain area, then the UN does not have the power to say they must go. They can exhort, they can make statements in New York, and they've made some very strong statements over the past year based on human rights, humanitarian relief. But there's not been an audience in Damascus that's been willing to lift the siege that an area like Yarmouk has lived under.
And of course, we're now seeing hundreds of thousands of refugees, millions in Lebanon's case, go to the neighboring countries, which are fragile themselves. You were former ambassador to both Syria and Saudi Arabia. You know the region very well. How destabilizing in the long term do you think that these millions of refugees could be across the region?
I think they already are being destabilizing. Lebanon, first of all, then Jordan. I think Turkey is more resilient, is a larger country, larger economy, able to take the blows of the weight of the refugees. But Lebanon, it's a very fragile situation, and you've seen reactions throughout the country of violence, it stimulated, their presence as stimulating fighting between Lebanese, cross-border fighting with Syrian authorities. It's a very delicate situation.
All right. Ambassador Richard Murphy, former U.S. ambassador to Syria and Saudi Arabia. Sir, thank you so much for sharing your views with us on Al Jazeera.